The words of a monster himself, possibly the devil reincarnated, Chris Watts. Welcome back, everybody, to Playing Your Cards Right with your host, Matthew and
Dr. Samantha Williams.
And also in the room we got Rocky. He decided he wanted to be part of this episode. So.
Again.
He just, wants to be part of the show, I guess. Might have to take a picture, I guess, so everyone knows what it looks like.
I mean, probably. I am surprised, though. Mine's hanging out downstairs being quiet right now.
Well, because we don't have a monster like Chris Watts around.
Probably.
So, today's episode is mainly focused on the devil himself, Mr. Chris Watts. But we're also throwing in some sports, because, can't have the sports half without talking about sports.
And it's what we do, everything in between.
Yeah, everything in between. So, with the sports half of today's talk, we're going to talk about our predictions when they come to the Oklahoma State University football team's schedule this year. Now, we are just over a little, I think we have 5 Fridays or Thursdays or Fridays until first game, so we're getting right there. It's pretty darn close to go time, so our weekends are about ready to get filled.
Yeah, they are.
Sports and more sports. So there's that. So the first game is actually Thursday night, September 1st at 6 o'clock, so that'll be interesting. Thursday night games. It's kind of weird and odd, but it is what it is. So,
but we'll be there.
Yeah, we'll be there. We'll be at every home game. Well, minus one.
Yeah.
Little 20-year reunion, high school reunion to go to. So
for the one who's the oldest of us.
Hey, it's okay. It's okay. But then we also do have there's an announcement that the Tulsa Oilers are going to be making on Tuesday. Speculation is that they are bringing another arena football team to town. So if that's actually legitimately the case, we could have a new sport to add into our conversations. Now, there used to be, for the people who live in Oklahoma or used to live in Oklahoma, you probably remember the Tulsa Talons. I remember them growing up, whatever. So I don't know that it's going to be necessarily the Arena Football League. I don't know that, I know they're still in existence, but they're not anywhere near as big. I think it might be part of the IFL or IFC or something like that, because I know Vegas just did the same thing. And they've been playing some indoor teams, so Colorado used to have a team for a while, so could be interesting.
Yeah, we'll have to see and go to some.
Mm-hmm.
If it's true.
If it's true, yeah. But back to OSU's schedule here. So some updates I've seen from the OSU athletic department. Obviously, one of the biggest is they got some new turf. I don't know if it's AstroTurf or Field Turf or what the exact of it is. I know it's a sand base, but past that I don't know. But from everything picture-wise, it looks like the grass in air quotes is a lot darker green, and the end zones are a lot brighter orange. So
it looks good, though.
Looks good. And I have a few opinions on the logos, but they had asked for people's opinions on logos, and I think the overwhelming majority of support that I saw was people saying that they wanted to see the Curse of Cowboys look in the end zone.
That was my preference.
Which would have been cool. If they wanted to really stand out, we could have just gone with an orange field, which would have been crazy.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're allowed to do that anymore. Kind of do the a la Boise State thing with the blue turf. But it could have been better, but I'll hold reservation on my final decision on that until we actually get in the stadium and see.
Yeah.
But just from the pictures, it looks pretty freaking amazing. So we'll see. So the first game could be a trap game for OSU. If you remember your history of OSU football very well. I don't remember what year it was, but I do remember this team came in and upset us last time they were here. on a call that was really, there's really no other way to put it. It was completely bullcrap. The play should never have happened because of the rule book, and the umpires did not follow the rule book and therefore gave Central Michigan one extra play. They threw it in the end zone, touchdown, and beat us. So, barring any crazy outcome like that again, I don't see it happening again, because this team is pretty much almost the same team on the offense. At least, I mean, we have some additions, and I think that'll help, but I think we have a far better defense, so I don't think we're going to have that issue. So, Central Michigan, I think we're going to win that game.
Yeah, I would agree with that one.
I don't think it's going to be. I think the offense will probably sputter a little bit because it is the first game, but I think defense, from everything I've been seeing, defense should be pretty much on point. The next game, we play Arizona State at home. Again, I mean, last time we played Arizona State, we played them there. It was pretty much a easy win. I don't think we're going to have any problems with Arizona State.
No.
It has the possibility to be a potentially trap game where, if we don't pay attention, and we could wind up in trouble. But I think they're going to pull it out at home. I think that helps. The third game, the game that we're going to miss, which I think I'm going to be okay with because it's Arkansas Pine Bluff.
Yeah, I don't know much about them.
I think that's going to be one of those games that score could rise real quick and could be a humongous blowout. But then they get into Big 12 play, and this is where I start to get a little worried, because the very first game of Big 12 play is Baylor.
Yeah.
And I just don't know how I feel about that, because it's at Baylor, and the problems that we had with Baylor last year in the Big 12 championship game, I just don't know.
Yeah, unfortunately, I put that one as a possible loss for OSU.
That one, it's really hard because I think they have such a sour taste in their mouth, and I think you're going to remember that with Baylor. So, I think that one, if I'm feeling strong on a loss, I think that one could definitely be a loss early in the season. And then the next week we go play Tech at home. So Texas Tech at home. Well, Texas Tech has improved again. It's the first Big 12 game at home. I'm feeling pretty good about this one. I think we're going to win. I think it's going to be a dogfight. I think it'll be close. But if OSU's defense is as good as advertised of the defensive coordinator that we got now, and everything is as good as what I've heard, I think that one, it could come down to defense and who stops who enough. So that one I'm leaning to OSU.
I got OSU for that one as well.
And then the next week, OSU goes on the road, and so do we, because we're going to go.
Oh, yes. TCU.
TCU. Go to Fort Worth. It's close enough. Why not? I think OSU's going to pull this one. I don't think...
That's what I think.
TCU is kind of still in the rebuild, I think, a little bit. They were one of the not-so-good teams last year in the Big 12. I actually did go to a game with my buddy Gene last year, TCU versus Kansas, two of the cellar-dweller teams in the Big 12, at least in football, and man, that was actually a fairly good game for TCU, but again, you're playing Kansas, so, I mean, there is that. But they do have a nice stadium. I will give it up to TCU. Their football stadium is pretty awesome. Campus is pretty awesome. Doesn't touch OSU's, but still nice. Then the next game, homecoming, versus one of those teams that, well, in a couple years we won't have to worry about anymore. Good old Texas.
Yeah, and I put them to win that one because I feel like they've got enough with them leaving that they, you know, they would want to make an impression.
Yeah. Texas could be a trap game. It depends what Texas team shows up. I mean, they've been in the rebuild situation, and they, you know, haven't really met expectations as in the last couple of years. You know, they've dealt with some coaching changes and some issues, whatever. I think the one thing that's going to really, really help OSU with this is the fact that Texas plays OU 2 weeks before they play OSU, and then they have to deal with Iowa State the week before they play OSU. So Texas kind of has to go through the gauntlet. Granted, they do have Iowa State at home, but Iowa State likes to be that shifty team that causes problems. And then, of course, the Red River shootout. I mean, there's potential for Texas to really be banged up. So I like OSU's chances with it being homecoming and being kind of a charged environment because of the whole entire them leaving thing. So I'm going to hang OSU on this one. I think they're going to be able to pull it out. The next week, OSU has to go to the Little Apple and good old K-State. That could be a good game. I mean, K-State is kind of one of those teams that, you know, they can really come up on you and really surprise you. They've been good, and then they've had years where it's just like, what's going on with K-State? Like, something's up with these guys. But they seem to do pretty good last year, and I mean, they're still K-State. K-State has the ability to do some damage. So I expect it to be a close game, but I think OSU is going to pull this one. I feel. I mean, I wouldn't say that I feel 100% that they're going to win this one. I maybe 60-40, just because it is K-State, and we always do seem to have some issues at the Little Apple, so could be interesting. The next week, I'm 100% win.
Yeah.
Because if we were to lose,
that'd be bad. And we don't deserve to play.
I would, yeah. It'd be bad. Because the next week you got to go play good old KU. At KU, but I'm not really too worried.
Matter.
I'm not too worried. Now, Kansas has improved. You know, they keep on getting a little bit better and better, but they just don't have the talent to match up against OSU, and I don't think it's going to be.
No.
I think as long as OSU doesn't do anything stupid and try to play outside of themselves and whatever, and look past KU, because that would be the problem, because right after KU is Iowa State at home. So as long as they don't look past Kansas, I think they can win fairly easily in Kansas. And then, like I said, the next week is Iowa State at home. That's the game that I don't like. We've had problems with Iowa State. Now, granted, it seems like we've had more problems with Iowa State at Iowa State, but still, I don't like this. It's late in the year, and has OSU be going with no losses at this point, this is the game that always just gets them, and it's always Iowa State. So I'm a little unnerving on the Iowa State game. So that one, I'm saying, it's a 50-50 toss-up right now.
I would agree.
And then the game of all games in the state of Oklahoma.
There's only one university here that matters.
Now, careful with your wordage there, because they say there's only one Oklahoma.
Oh, I'm well aware. And it's Oklahoma State.
Wow. I've always thought it was kind of a dumb statement. It's like there's only one Oklahoma.
Obviously.
Duh. It's like, okay.
It's not
Yeah.
like the Carolinas when you have to differentiate between North and South.
No, not even only that. We're not Oklahoma. We're Oklahoma State.
Right.
It's like, okay. That game is in the shithole, a.k.a. that other
Norman.
place, a.k.a. yeah. So, that one, I don't know. I don't know how OU's going to be. There's a potential for loss. And it wouldn't surprise me if they did, just because we don't exactly have the greatest track record in Norman.
Yeah.
But, I mean, 2 years in a row of beating OU, I mean, I could be down for that.
I mean, if we're not going to have a bedlam for a few years, the Cowboys better get that in our heads, make the most of what they have left.
Well, we'll see how many years we have left. According to Gundy, if anybody has paid attention to the Big 12 media days, he was basically saying that maybe this one and the one after might be it, or this one might be it. It's just going to have to kind of wait and see when OU's going to go ahead and exit the Big 12. I mean, according to the SEC, they say that they are not going to be coming over to the SEC until 2025, but we all know that's a bunch of jibber jabber. I don't really know how much I believe that they aren't going to jump ship early. OU said they're not going to, but again, OU said a lot, Texas has said a lot. I don't know that I necessarily believe any of them.
It's one of those we're just going to have to wait and see what happens when it happens.
Yeah. I mean, personally, and this is just maybe my own personal opinion, I would not mind seeing OU leave early.
No.
I really wouldn't. Just because it would be nice to have our new members come next year, and we don't even have to deal with OU in Texas, and we can get a taste of the new Big 12 right away.
Yeah.
That would be nice. Now, if they do stick around and are part of the newer, bigger Big 12, then my hope there would be that next year would be it. Obviously, next year's game would be back in Stillwater. One more shot.
Mm-hmm.
That might be kind of sweet. And it might be kind of sweet to have all the new members join up in the Big 12 and everyone just slaughter OU.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to see Cincinnati and UCF and BYU beat up on OU before they leave. That would be kind of funny.
Oh, absolutely it would be.
The likelihood of it happening, probably not necessarily that great, but it would be kind of funny to see them lose a couple games. However, that schedule would work out. I mean, that's the biggest thing we don't know is what's the scheduling going to do. But it'll be interesting to see. And then last game of the year at home, good old West Virginia, which could be a good game. Usually is. Especially being right after we play OU Thanksgiving weekend. Potential there for an upset by West Virginia, but I just don't see it happening. I think OSU's going to pull it out. I don't really feel too confident in West Virginia's abilities to come in to Stillwater and wreck it. So
I'm 50-50 on that one.
West Virginia is that sketchy, streaky team that I don't see it happening, but doesn't necessarily mean that it won't happen. So, overall, I think OSU is going to wind up, as much as I would like to say they are going to be up in the conversation for the top two spots to be into the Big 12 championship game. I think it can happen, but I think a lot of things depend upon how the offense does this year, how we can stay healthy, and if our defense is actually as good as what we think it's going to be. Because if it is, I think there's potential to go back to the Big 12 championship game, maybe as the number 2 seed, maybe not the number 1 seed, maybe a repeat of Bedlam. I can see that.
Yeah.
And I might be all right with OU versus OSU for the Big 12 championship. That might be kind of fun.
Oh, absolutely.
But we'll just have to wait and see. The fun part of sports.
Yeah.
But now we get to talk about the devil guy himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny that that's how you referred to him, because I didn't know quite as much when I first started researching for this episode. And there are several TV shows that are, nonfiction based, that devil is in the title somewhere when they do an episode on him.
Well, I don't think there's any other way to describe this guy. There's a special place in hell for him. I mean, I'm not usually one to, say things about people being in hell and etc., whether or not you believe in it or not.
Yeah.
But there's a special place in hell for that guy, because he's just something else. The fact that he's still alive shocks me.
Oh, I agree.
I mean, criminal justice taken into the hands by the criminals. I mean, I don't know if he's in solitary or not up in Wisconsin, but I think the last thing I heard was he at least started out in solitary, but then I think they were going to release him to general pop. So
Yeah.
yeah, but he might have. I mean, I just don't know. I would think that any of the jail shows or anything like that I've ever seen, they're always pretty much, hey, they don't take too kindly to women beaters, child molesters, child killers, rapists.
Well, and for all we know, he's been in solitary this whole time. I mean, we don't know.
Who knows?
And if that's the case, that's probably the only reason why he is still alive.
Who knows?
But
this guy, so he, I remember this whole entire event happening. I didn't really have to do any research because I lived in Colorado. During this time, I was working in the oil field, so this was kind of one of those things that everybody in the patch pretty much knew about, and everybody in Colorado knew about. And
because I didn't know any, I did research on, because in my field we need to know what was going on before to understand why something happened, or with this situation, to even begin to try and understand. And so I really dug into what went on before the murders happened. So I found a lot of interesting information from both Shanann and Chris and their background prior to even meeting each other, that raised questions in my mind as I was, learning then what was going on in the weeks leading up to the murders. And so some of the information I found, and you probably know some of this, as far as Shanann goes, she had been previously married and was actually married for 5 years. And her ex-husband had said, she didn't seem very interested in the marriage and had checked out early on. And so they did obviously end up getting divorced. And then by the time she was 25, she had actually saved enough money to purchase her own home. Now, this is in, I think, North Carolina, where they're originally from.
Yep.
So I don't know, I didn't dig enough to know, how those prices are different from there in Colorado, but I know cost of living in Colorado is outrageous.
Mm-hmm.
But, so at 25, she had saved up enough money to build her own home. But in 2010... she said that was the darkest point of her life. She had been diagnosed with lupus. Friends were kind of disowning her because she would not go hang out. Now, granted, a lot of that had to do with her lupus. And she did say she felt scared and alone. Her family said she was very outgoing, liked to meet new people, and that she would pour herself into her work. Chris, though, oddly enough, was described as happy, friendly, soft-spoken, respectful, smart, clean-cut, and all the girls liked him. But, however, he didn't have much of a social life. And he very rarely dated, if ever, because he was just too shy to talk to anyone. And so their relationship actually got started when Chris sent Shanann a friend request on Facebook in 2010, in the summer of that year. They had a mutual friend, which happened to be Chris's cousin's wife. And, but Shanann reported that, she never expected anything to happen from that relationship. But she went ahead and accepted the friend request. And, after exchanging some messages, she did agree to go on a date with him. What I found interesting about their first date, she was not impressed with him at all. She thought he was too underdressed, which, makes me think, okay, is she too uppity? Is she too snobby? I don't know. I feel like that is something that, I don't know what they went and did on their first date, but if that's what is a down point to your date, what's going on there? But she did agree to a second date. They got to the third date, and he had planned a day at the beach. They were only about 2 hours away from Myrtle Beach. And she had a lupus flare-up, so they had to come back early. And, he cared about her so much at that point that she had laid her head in his lap to rest on the way back, and he was afraid to move because he didn't want to wake her up. Let's see. She was impressed with him because, like I said before, her other friends had basically deserted her or disowned her because of her lupus. And she would cancel on Chris a lot, but he never left. He stuck around through all of her illness and health issues, and this did impress her. So she decided that they were going to have a family cookout. Her family really liked Chris. They thought, he was a great fit for her. He treated her so well. But his family had the completely opposite feeling. They disapproved, and some went as far as say that his mom didn't like it because she wasn't used to him dating. And so I don't think that that's a real good reason not to like someone, but it's just interesting how you have this guy who will potentially murder the whole family, and her family likes him, but it's his family that doesn't like her.
Yeah. I think he was just a simp.
Yeah.
Ooh, girls paying attention to me.
Yeah.
Block.
Well, and that will go further with, everything I learned about after. So they got married in November of 2012. They had 2 children. Bella was born December of 2013, and Celeste was born July of 2015. However, right before Celeste was born, in June of 2015, they filed for bankruptcy.
Well, and need to back it up to that. They moved to Colorado because they took a trip out there, and she felt better.
Yes.
Because, I'll definitely say that, living in Colorado is definitely different. It's, higher elevation does some weird stuff to you. I remember, whenever I was moving into my apartment, I I've been working a crap ton of hours, and setting up the lab, and there in Colorado because we hadn't got it up and going yet. So I was just setting it up. So I was working 50, 60 hours, whatever, and trying to move in between all that good stuff, and it was just hell. And I remember the apartment complex I lived in Brighton was on the 3rd floor, and carrying boxes up, I about passed out because of the elevation or whatever. But so I do know that your body definitely does do some weird things in Colorado, just because of the thin air and whatever. But it wouldn't change the world for living there. Shout out to our friends Ashley and Ryan. We miss you guys. You guys are listening. We need to hang out again soon. It's always a good time hanging out with you guys.
Absolutely.
Which, thanks to work, is the reason why I met Ryan. So.
Yep.
But they really, I understand the whole entire. That's part of the main reason why they moved out there is because Shanann loved it. She felt like home. She felt better, whatever. But they really, in my opinion, should never have moved out there to begin with.
No, I agree.
Because he didn't start out in the oil field. He started out as a freaking mechanic working for a dealership. Which, I'm sorry, you're maybe making $20 an hour, maybe, if you're lucky. And the house that they lived in Frederick is not a cheap
no,
town
they
to
were
live in.
Definitely living outside of their means.
Which is why they led to bankruptcy. You're over $60,000 in credit card debt. You're behind on the mortgage.
Yeah. Which I wrote down all the numbers. Just their mortgage was $3,000 a month, and their car payment was $600. So when I did the figures, that only left them with $1,300 a month for all other expenses. So that credit card debt, student loans, their utility bills, food for the family, and then I actually learned that they were being sued or had been sued already by their homeowners association because they hadn't been paying their fees, which several places in Colorado have homeowners association, and they are very big sticklers on that. So
different areas also have different costs. Some of them they pay monthly, some of them they pay yearly. Like mine was yearly, but mine was only like $100 a month or $100 a year, so it was a joke. But if you go down there and you're in Frederick, whatever, in Firestone, Frederick, that area, most of those homes are easily $400,000 homes now.
Or more.
Well, now they average about $500,000, if not more. So.
Which, if you're looking to buy, apparently this house is for sale.
Yeah, supposedly. But,
if you want to live in a murder house.
Well, yeah, there is that. But, yeah, the fact that they were that much in debt, and which is just mind-blowing. It just goes to show, kind of like it said in the last podcast about how people will throw anything on Facebook to make it look like Facebook, well, doesn't even have to be Facebook, any social media, to make it look like their life is so freaking perfect, and really it's hell.
And that's part of the timeline that I am looking at, the weeks leading up to the murder. Because in June, of course, you have Father's Day, and Shanann had made this cutesy post about how blessed they were to have him in their lives, and she had made a cute video about the girls and all this, painting a picture perfect world. But also in June, she told him that she was pregnant with her 3rd child, and it was a boy. And at the time of murder, she was about 15 weeks along at that point, to kind of give you listeners an idea on that.
The whole thing, she went out of town, whatever. He was always going around hanging with Nicole, I think was her name.
Yeah, so that started in 2018 that he met Nicole. Nicole was a co-worker of his. And their affair, well, depends on your definition of affair. I would say their affair started in late June when they started going out one-on-one, even though they claim the physical relationship did not start until July.
I think the whole thing. He was not wearing his wedding ring at work, which, I mean, I know there's a lot of discussions about that. I mean, it is kind of a thing. I mean, people do have to understand when you're in the oil field, it is kind of...
It can be a safety hazard.
It can be a major safety hazard to be wearing any jewelry, especially when you're out there drinking open tanks and whatever. I mean, now granted, his job wasn't necessarily as labor intensive dealing with machinery as, say, a driller or anybody out in the service companies, whatever. But still, I mean, it is one of those things where if you're out in the field, I mean, there could be some issues there. But to not be wearing it around the office, that's kind of another situation. That's just kind of like, okay, you know, he was definitely playing it up, whatever. The only thing that's ever really kind of bugged me about the whole situation of the whole entire affair, I guess, is I know she did come over to the house a few times or whatever. She never went upstairs, according to her and what she said. But, you know, it's like, okay, well, you've had to have seen all these pictures of the whole entire happy family around that house.
Right.
And all of Shanann's stuff there. And it's like, you know, you're sitting there telling her that, oh yeah, you know, we're going through a divorce and yada 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 yada, and it's like, okay. And I mean, you know, having been divorced myself, I mean, obviously I don't have kids, and you know, it's a completely different situation, but I just have a hard time, you know, okay, yeah, we're having an affair, and yeah, I'm going through a divorce. Okay, well, do you still live with your wife? You're divorcing? Okay, that's weird. And I mean, yeah, okay, it's one thing, you know, little girls, you know, you don't want to take down photos of everyone because that'll mentally screw the kids up. But
that got me was he told her at the end of July that their divorce was final.
Yeah.
Like, you can't, you're not going to still be living with your ex-spouse after their divorce is final, typically.
No. I mean, maybe it made more sense if that was the case, but them having both been going through bankruptcy, had that actually been true that they were going through a divorce and they were declaring bankruptcy, the judge would make them sell the house.
Right.
Just to clear off all debts for both sides. So, that to me, I mean, obviously, Nicole didn't know any better as far as, you know, the money situation, whatever, because they went out to nice dinners, they took trips and shit together. I mean, granted, that's part of the credit card debt that got racked up, but
right.
The whole entire thing, I mean, it's just, you know, you're sitting there saying what you are about Shanann and whatever, and then for her to sit there and look at pictures of them together in the house, it's like,
right,
this is kind of jacked up.
Well, and Shanann had a feeling something was going on during that late June through July period, because she made it known to her friends. Like, she would text them and say, I think he's cheating on me, but then tells them when she's getting ready to leave for her work trip, just a few days before the incident happens, that they'd had a really great conversation, and that they were in a good place. And that was on August 9th that she was heading out of town for this business trip. And so while she was gone, though, he hired a babysitter to come watch their kids and told the babysitter that he was going to a ball game with coworkers, but really he went out to a bar with Nicole. So clearly, whatever conversation Shanann thought that they had was not a true conversation.
No, he was just a straight up liar. I mean, you get to the part that I remember the most, the whole entire thing starting off, whatever. Now, Oldfield is a very tight knit community, and whenever 9 News, that's where start of our little show came from them. He did an interview with all the Denver local stations, whatever, and at the time, it was just kind of like, oh crap, this guy's wife and kids are gone, whatever. I thought the interview then was kind of weird. Something just didn't seem right with the interview, and obviously none of us knew what we know now, but it was just very dry. Wasn't very much emotion. Arms crossed. He was speaking of them in the past tense, and that was kind of weird. And I mean, just the whole thing just seemed way off to me. And it was like, yeah, I can get being camera shy, whatever, because you have all this Denver media around you, whatever. But the way the words that he used, being in past tense, was just kind of uber weird.
Right.
And there was literally no crying, no excitement in his voice, no, shaking. There was no signs of like what you would normally see whenever your kids are gone, missing, whatever. That whole entire thing was just weird. And then you look at the way he was acting whenever the police came through and did a walkthrough of the house, whatever. Seemed really weird. Like it was just he was too cordial, formal with the officers, whatever. And even then, they were just kind of like, man, this is the most organized, cleanest house I've ever seen. Which, yeah, I mean, anyone, you should go look at the officers' body cam footage of walking through the house. I wish I could be as organized as they were. Because holy F. Like, everything was organized. Everything had a bin. Everything was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
I could kill for that organization. But then what got me is whenever, I mean, it's something for the cops to sit there and to say something about how organized the house is and clean it is for something going down.
Right.
They knew right then and there something ain't adding up. But then whenever they show the body cam footage of Chris being in his next door neighbor's house, and they are watching the tapes of him backing up to the house, whatever, so he can put his tools in, quote unquote, and whatever. And then whenever Chris walks out the front door, the neighbor goes, he ain't acting right. Something's off. And it's just like, oh man. And to sit there, and I think the part of the whole thing that, like, uberly pisses me off is, when they were breaking him down in the interrogation room, he thought, well, at first he thought he was off scot-free. Because who the hell is going to find him? Number one. Number two, he's, nothing would point to him being the guy. Because there was basically no evidence of anything. It just looked like there was an extremely clean house. Someone left behind their phone and all their medication, all that stuff. So it does kind of seem like if you weren't a trained investigator or whatever, you could be really quick to say, oh yeah, something, she must have just been grabbed or snatched or whatever. But a trained investigator also always knows too, that crime scene's way too clean. Mm-hmm. Like, there's the video camera footage from the front door of Shanann coming in. There would be video camera footage of her leaving. There was none. I mean, it's like he didn't think about that part. He didn't, And then when they finally broke him in interrogation, he goes, "Oh, well, she killed him. She killed the kids."
Well, now you're getting ahead of me.
Well,
Because I feel like, that is part of it, and it's part of the sketchy timeline, because if you look at what really happened, on August 13th, she gets home at like 1:45, 2 o'clock in the morning from her business trip, and he's getting up around 5, wakes her up to have the conversation with her, finally comes clean about the affair, and she tells him, "I'm taking the kids and you're never going to see them again." And so
that's after they had sex, though.
that wasn't in my research.
Yes. So they had sex whenever she got home. Then he admitted the affair.
Right.
After having sex.
Right.
And then that's when she said, "Well, you're never going to see him again."
Right. And then, so he then strangles her, and their 4-year-old daughter walks in and sees it happen.
No, he sees her dragging her down the steps, or putting her in the bed sheets.
Something along those lines.
Nobody actually saw Shanann get strangled.
Well, anyway. So Bella asks what's wrong with Mommy, and he says she's just sick. We have to take her to the doctor. So he wraps her in a blanket, puts her in the truck, and then puts Bella and Celeste in the truck. And for whatever reason, grabs a couple blankets for them, and then drives 45 minutes to his work.
Well, not to the work, to the site.
Well,
to the work site where he was been working. The problem, though, I don't think he strangled her. I think he did more. Because it wound up coming out, there's videos of it, from the county examiner's office, that there's blood on the sheets.
But
that she was wrapped in.
But that could be from, at that point, a miscarriage, for all we know.
No, Nico was still in there.
Wow.
Still fine. So that's why he could have possibly choked her to the point where she was regurgitating blood. It is possible.
Yeah.
But I think something maybe even more sinister happened. I definitely think
it is quite possible. We only know what happened because he told us.
Well,
and he's only going to tell us what he wants to.
I definitely think she was asphyxiated. I think that definitely did happen.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe he just held the pillow over her throat or choked her out enough to where she did gurgitate up some blood or whatever. But the blood on the bed sheet that she was wrapped in, it's a fairly good amount. So.
But when they get to the site, he then takes Celeste's favorite blanket and smothers her with it.
After burying Shanann first.
Well, all the stuff I said he did that last.
Yeah.
But then threw her in an oil tank, came back, Bella asked, "Are you going to do the same thing to me, Daddy?" And then he smothers her and puts her in an oil tank.
And according to him, he doesn't know why. He doesn't remember doing it.
Well, and that's what he can claim, but he loaded him in the car and drove 45 minutes.
Yes, that part, but he claims he doesn't remember strangling the kids. He doesn't remember doing that. He don't know why he did it. And it's not just throw those kids in that tank. Those openings are only maybe 4 inches wide.
Right.
5 inches wide. He freaking shoved them down that damn thing. He probably broke bones. Hell, they found hair at the top of the well.
Yeah.
Where he shoved them in. And it was so bad, and they had been in there for a few days, that their skin was literally falling off of them.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever the emergency responders found them. And, we talk about, on the last one, resources, and if you need mental help, whatever, everybody that has dealt with that has had to go through mental health training, whatever, and they see some shit, and a lot of them actually quit right after that because they couldn't deal with it anymore. That just tells you about how bad and just grotesque everything. They were all getting therapy, and it wasn't enough for them to even keep doing their job because what they had seen affected them that much. And that's not even like, cutting them up, slicing them up with a knife, or doing something really sadistic. It was sadistic what he did, but it wasn't, Hannibal Lecter weird crap, whatever. It was just that hard to see skin, whatever, falling off of these kids. And, and if it wasn't for the fact that he got to talk to his dad, and he finally admitted to his dad that he killed Shanann.
You keep jumping ahead of the timeline. That's not how it went.
Well, it's part of the investigation.
But that's still jumping ahead, because even after he puts the two girls in the oil tank, then he digs the shallow grave and sticks Shanann in it.
Did that first.
I told you. All the research I found says he did it after.
No, he did it first.
Anyway.
Because that was the first thing he did when he got to the site, was bury Shanann.
Anyway, he was not the one who filed a missing person report on her. It was actually her best friend that had dropped her off early that morning, and she had been worried because she had not heard at all from Shanann that day, and she knew that she was supposed to have a doctor's appointment, and she never showed up to that doctor's appointment. So she called in the missing person and had the police come out and do a wellness check. And that's when it went from there. And then, so it was the day after, on August 14th, that he talked to the media, which you already talked about, so I'm not going to cover that again. On the 15th, at this point, the FBI was called in to help search for them. Chris was asked to do a polygraph. For whatever reason, he agreed. I want to know if he thought he could actually pass it.
Probably.
But he did not pass it. But I also don't know why he agreed, because that's not, like, the best way to prove somebody's guilt or innocence. Because those tests just read funny. But then on the 15th, that's when he confessed to his father and said he did it because Shanann had smothered the two girls. The 16th, that's when their bodies were found. And by the 21st, Chris had been charged with 9 different counts. So he ended up with 3 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of first-degree murder, in addition to that for the 2 girls being under the age of 12. 1 count of unlawful termination of pregnancy, because again, she was 15 weeks pregnant when she was killed. And 3 counts of tampering with a body.
Yep, he did some really ridiculous things. There's no doubt about that. He really... to sit there and say that you don't have any recollection of doing it,
Right.
Whatever.
Well,
and had it not been for her parents, he would be executed by...
Absolutely. So then, if you hear any barking, Jax has now joined us, and he's special. But November 6th, he did go ahead and plead guilty to all 9 counts that he was charged with. So November 6th, he pleads guilty to all 9 counts that he was charged with. And November 19th, he had his sentencing. So from August 13th to November 19th, that's how long the whole process took, which to me seems fairly quickly. But again, he pled guilty, so he didn't have to go through a whole trial, which probably took less time. So his sentencing, he got 5 life sentences for the first degree murders. 2 of those would be served concurrently, so at the same time as 2 other life sentences. He also got 48 years for unlawful termination of a pregnancy and an additional 36 years for tampering with or disposing of the bodies. So he's definitely not getting out in his lifetime. Like, he's going to die in jail, whether that be someone helps him or he just dies of natural causes there. Matthew was right in that her family had a lot to do with him not getting the death penalty. They did not want the death penalty for him. However, they did sue him in a civil case. And November 18th, 2019, he was ordered to pay Shanann's family $6 million with 8% growth. And they knew that he would obviously not pay it. However, if he were to ever profit in any way over stuff that had happened, or if he were to write a book or anything like that, he wouldn't get that money. That money would go to her parents, which I think is more than fair.
Yeah. Really what needs to happen is the house needs to be bulldozed and a park put in there. That's what a lot of people in that neighborhood have said that they want. They don't necessarily want they not necessarily they don't want, but they would feel it'd be more appropriate for a park to be put in there in the kids' names, which I feel would be a lot more appropriate than someone living in that house, whatever. I mean, obviously, right after it happened, there was a lot of vigils and stuff like that and whatever. I don't know that it's necessarily a tourist thing to go check out the house now, but I mean, I'm sure there's people that do come check it out, whatever, but you know, it's one of those things where I think a park would be better suited. They probably, need it. Those houses in that town, whatever, are so close together, a nice little park would be kind of nice. Yeah. But it's really jacked up, you know. Do you look at it as he was wanting to, and this is something that me and a lot of my coworkers talked about, you know, was this done because he wanted a whole entire new life and didn't want to be tied down to his past life? Because, let's face it, if he did divorce Shanann, whatever, he was going to be paying 3 kids of child support, which he wouldn't have hardly any money to be able to do jack squat with. You may get a quote-unquote new life, but your new life is going to be connected to your old life. I think he wanted a clean break. He didn't want to deal with everything. I think whenever Shanann did the surprise looking pregnant, whatever, I think that sent him overboard. I don't think necessarily that he was going to do anything, but that third kid, you're already financially strapped. You're getting ready to bring in another kid to the situation. He, whether or not Shanann and him were having a good sex life and everything else, I really don't think that they were. I think it was another one of those things.
Well, she admitted in some of those messages where she was talking about how she thought that he was cheating on her, that they had not been intimate in that entire time frame.
Well, and that's why I think there was more to the story going on, and, obviously they were because she was pregnant, but again, it's one of those situations where
But that was also before he started the affair as well.
Well, yes, but I'm looking more of it in terms of when did he start? Like, I mean, you just don't sit there and wake up one day, well, I'm going to have an affair. It's something that is sitting there building over time, and all of a sudden you just break. So, I mean...
Well, I did a little digging on the psychology of this because, one, that's literally what I do, is psychology stuff. And I was surprised to see that no one had a mental diagnosis for him. They had some rule outs. So bipolar was the big one I saw where it was consistent and they thought that was a possibility, but then they ruled it out. But the common theme was when you look at the type of killer that he is and what that means. So they all have labeled him a family annihilator. And, I mean, it is what it says. He is a person from the family who killed other people in the family. And in this case, it was all of them. When you look at the background or the profile of a family annihilator, they are most often middle-aged men, try to provide for a good life, would appear to his neighbors to be a dedicated husband and father. And up to that point, that is what he was portraying. But there are 4 reasons why these types of murders happen. 1, there's a breakdown or change in family relationship. I think that was a contributing factor for him because he was changing the family dynamics of having the affair. There was a change in the family by adding the 3rd baby. The second one is money worries and financial hardship. We already know that they were having financial problems. They'd already filed bankruptcy and they were still not able to get to where they were living within their means. The third one is cultural honor killings. That's not what was going on here. It had nothing to do with preserving family honor. And then the fourth one is mental illness. And at this point, because of the research I've done, I can't say that I see any evidence for that. And then of those, there are 2 categories. You have the livid killer, motivated by anger and rage, and then the civil reputable, which is the complete opposite. He wants to try and save the family from hardships and shame and financial problems or bankruptcy. I do not think he was that second one. He clearly says that he was angry and did it out of anger. And so I think he does fit this category of killer, a family annihilator, and he's the livid killer. And I don't think that had anything to do with mental illness. I think she said something he didn't like, which meant he wasn't getting his way, became enraged, and then murdered his wife. And then I think it just escalated from there. I mean, he had 45 minutes to calm down before he dumped her body, and yet he chose to kill his 2 children.
You definitely have to have something wrong with you to pull off everything that he did, the way he did it. I mean, to sit there and think that, again, you know, I need a new life, I want a new life, and you think that this is the best way to do it. Like,
right.
What the hell?
Or the family dynamics change so much that you think this is the only way out? This is the only way to fix it?
I mean, they were so much in debt, they were screwed. I mean, they were royally going to be screwed. But, again, I mean, there's ways to work through bankruptcy, there's ways to deal with all that. I mean, obviously, being sued by your HOA and stuff like that, you know, there's a lot of problems. And, yeah, I mean, Shanann was successful at what she did, but
they
successful.
were still living outside their means. And her job at that time wasn't your typical steady income.
And
she was working for one of the pyramid companies.
Yeah, and that's kind of my point of the situation is, it's like, I mean, obviously with lupus, it presents challenges, whatever, but Colorado being what it is and being such a state that understands things that aren't, normal, whether that be your social constructs or your, diseases or whatever, I'm pretty sure she could have found some kind of stable income that, would have helped the situation, but...
Right.
And then, to even make it even more messed up, whenever the trial thing was happening, this is something I don't know that we'll necessarily cover or not, but there was a whole entire another case, right dealing whenever they were going through the trial stuff or whatever, and if it wasn't already bad enough, in Colorado hearing, every day everyone was tuned into the courtroom, what information are we going to find out, from the initial appearance, whenever all the charges were, released, and everyone was glued to their TVs this whole entire time, from whenever they couldn't find Shanann, and it was every day something about it, whatever, to they arrested Chris Watts, to what they charged him with, and when they found him, and everything. That wasn't enough. Then there was another issue that happened in 2018 on Thanksgiving, where another mom wound up disappeared, whatever, and there was only the fiance to speak of it, and come to find out, and they had a little kid together, and come to find out that he was just as bad. He wasn't as sadistic. I guess it's kind of your viewpoint on what is sadistic, but it was pretty bad. He had a mistress, same kind of situation. They had known each other from early on, whatever, and I guess they dated before, and she was married, so it was like a double affair. He tried to get her to come kill his fiancée. She wouldn't do it because she just couldn't do it. And so this guy wound up going and murdering his fiancée with a baseball bat, smashed her head in to a point, and thank God the kid was only one. So the kid's probably, hopefully, not going to remember anything. Hopefully. But he smashed her head in to the point where teeth went flying everywhere, and they were finding teeth all over the apartment. And, maybe he wasn't a family annihilator, but to sit there and be able to even do something like that in front of your kid, it's really no different than what Watts did. He killed one of his girls in front of the other one. Flat out. It's bad that they're dead, but probably, if one of them had survived, they'd be so messed up. It wouldn't even be, they would be in trauma the rest of their life.
Mm-hmm.
And especially to know that, and I think that's the thing that kills me the most. Normally, whenever, it seems like whenever you have people that take out their family, they take out themselves too.
And most of the time, with family annihilators, that is what happens. But with any profile, it's never 100% accurate. It's more like, okay, this is what typically would happen. And I think that's where, the idea of him wanting to start over comes into play, because that's the one piece that doesn't match the rest of that mold, because he was having this affair. But even then, later on, this girlfriend was saying that he was basically losing it during this time, and she knew something was off, and I don't know that she would have stayed with him.
I don't
And
think
so
she
then
would've.
where would he have been?
Probably kill her too.
Yeah. Or himself at that point, because he literally killed his entire family, to potentially be with her, and she doesn't want to be with him, so what's he got left?
Yeah, and to sit there, I mean, and even if he did get away with it, I mean, she at some point would have to be like, okay, well, where are your kids? How are you going to respond to that? They're always with their mom, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he was screwed. I mean, it was he's definitely one of those guys that. Too bad there wasn't a way to get it to him earlier, where maybe all this could have been avoided. I mean, I just don't know. I don't understand the concept of. I mean, I understand the concept of wanting to start over, but the concept that you get somewhere in your head that the only way to accomplish this is to take out your whole entire family.
Yeah.
And he sat there and said in statements I saw all over, and I remember the biggest thing and most thing that made him happy was to be a dad.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Clearly made that known.
You're the biggest thing and the best thing you've ever done in your life is become a dad and be a dad, and then you kill him, and one right in front of the other.
Mm-hmm.
He's definitely messed up.
Absolutely.
It's hard to take him serious, whatever he says at this point anymore, because he's already been shown to be a liar. So he special place in hell.
I would agree.
Because yeah, and the other thing that I think is really interesting is he sits there and says that he has to go to bed every night and he sees them and talks to them, and he has to have those images in his head, and it's like, what, are we all supposed to feel sorry for you?
Because we don't.
I mean, it's like, okay,
You made your bed.
you made your bed, homie, live in it. Or, try to avoid Bubba and don't drop the soap. Because I mean, if people in jail always talk about, we don't take too kindly, we handle those situations.
Yeah.
Kind of makes you wonder with him. But I think that's a good wrap on Mr. Watsy. At least for this episode. Good second episode.
Yeah.
First episode is live, by the way, for people who may not know /or find the page and want
Because
to go
we
back to
are
the first
on
one.
Facebook as well.
Because we're on Facebook. That's where the page is. We're recording through Podcastle, and we have also uploaded to YouTube. So we do have a YouTube channel.
Uh-huh.
We do plan on going to Spotify, Apple, all the big boys at some point. But I think we will end this one here. And like we always say, hey, if you have a mental health issue, don't be afraid to call that mental health hotline.
Pound 988.
Pound 988. And then, hey, keep playing those cards right. And we hope we'll see y'all soon. Bye.